We're live and good evening. And no, I'm not a white guy in a bucket hat. I'm a brown guy in a blues hat. And joining this brown guy in this blues hat tonight is Steve. How are we going
Yeah,
tonight, Steve?
yeah, a bit of a half breed that's joining you this evening. Covering both sides of the stratosphere, being Maori and European as well, or Maori and Irish as well. But hey, all in all, it's a privilege and a pleasure to be on the TDM once again. And listen, just before we sort of move on, a big shout out to our creator, Mr. Paul Baines. It's his birthday today. What is he? 70? No, 80?
21
But
again,
we,
mate. 21
but
again.
wherever you are, Paul, have a very, very happy birthday. And I think he's celebrating his birthday with his family this evening. So, hey, all the very best. I hope you had a great day, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going out for dinner with the family tonight. So well earned night off, and obviously would have seen tweets either today or yesterday's basically 400 episodes of the New Zealand Sport Radio morning briefing. So puts in the big yards, waking up every morning and putting that out 400 times in a row. I think he slept in once.
Yep, I know he's done absolutely amazing. In fact, I was going to send him a message this morning and to watch it while he was on the show, but there was obviously no show. He'd taken the morning off, so good on him. He absolutely deserves it. In fact, I actually looked on Twitter as well, and interestingly enough, the NZ Sport Radio, or the TDM as it's known, quite a few followers as well. Ashwin ran about 14,000 followers, so that's really impressive. That's really impressive.
Oh, magnificent job, and I think a chance for us here to sort of basically sort of like highlight the achievements that he's made, because he won't do it himself, obviously. But the show's been going on from what, like about 4 years or so more, and then obviously last year during COVID times Paul launched New Zealand Sport Radio, particularly with those morning sport briefings, and we've grown it from there. And when you look at the channel that he's created, obviously based on rugby, but now with a league show. We've got the next show, and obviously the Super Rugby reviews, etc. So cricket's in hiatus, and one day, once we can get some cricket knowledgeable people available and not coaching, we'll get that going again as well. So, the achievement's actually amazing, that what he's been able to put together.
Oh, very much so, with the help of a few friends along the way, and I've got to say we've certainly enjoyed it, and it's fun being part of the New Zealand Sport Radio family, and getting out there and sort of covering a lot of grassroots is probably our biggest enjoyment. But with the show, we can take it in any direction, Ashwin, and I'm pretty
Yes,
sure
exactly.
you're the captain of the ship this evening.
Absolutely.
Steer us in that direction.
100%. So because Paul's not here tonight, we'll be talking blues rugby, and if we get a bit of time, we might talk about these other topics that we've got on the side as well.
We weren't kidding, Paul. We weren't kidding.
He thought we were in jest, but no. Yeah, just Simon. Basically, just Paul's birthday today, so he's taken a night off to go have dinner with the family and celebrate another milestone and another year on this mortal coil. So you'll be having to put up with us for this evening. So cracking on into it, and we'll start off with someone who's had a remarkable career and an amazing amount of achievements, and one Kieran Reid, who's announced his retirement. I think basically went out in the semi-finals over the weekend, and now be coming home to. We don't know whether he's going to Christchurch or whether he's going to be living in Manurewa with the in-laws, but he's going to be basically hanging the boots up.
Yeah, but it appears so. That's All Black 1083, Kieran Reid. Well, he played for the All Blacks between 2008 and 2019, and is one of the most capped players of all time, and that's probably behind Richie Mccloy. He was the IRB Player of the Year in 2013, and he was also a key member of the All Black winning side that won the World Cup in 2011 and 2015. So he's one of the few players out there that's won multiple World Cups. He's captained the All Blacks on 52 occasions, and as previously said, he's the second ranked of all time All Blacks out there. So he scored 26 tries during his international career and is the third most capped All Black in history, having played over 127 tests across an 11-year career. Now, Reid played for the Crusaders in Super Rugby, winning 4 titles. He's also captained Canterbury, winning multiple titles at provincial level, and in his final year domestically was the skipper of, actually I don't think he was the skipper of Counties Manukau. He didn't play a lot of games, and of course his final season in Japan saw that culminate on the weekend with, unfortunately, his team Toyota Verblitz knocked out in the semi-final. But boy, a pretty amazing all-round talented player who was also a very good cricketer who played age group cricket for Northern Districts, but also played for the New Zealand under-17 cricket team and was destined for big things in the 11-man code, but decided the 15-man code was more his go. Boy, talented sportsman, Ashwin.
Talented sportsman, and it's just like, it's funny, with all those achievements that he's made. One of the things that sticks in my head was actually in I can't remember what the name of the movie or the documentary that they put together. Well, not documentary, but the movie / telly movie that they put together was the Stephen Donnell story. And the guy walked into the Waiuku, not Waiuku, what's the Wesley College, and talking to the principal there, and it's like, and speaks to Stephen Donnell, is like, just off to Roseville College and gonna go chat to some guy called Kieran Reid.
yeah. Nicely thrown in there, isn't it? Wasn't
it? Yeah, absolutely. But seen as said, obviously at a development age as well, earmarked for some bigger things, but also admittedly by Kieran Reid, he used to go along to Eden Park, sit on the east in the terraces, and dream of becoming a blues player one day. But another one that got away.
yeah. We're so in the blues area. We're so good at talent identification.
Talent identification.
Yeah, we identify them and then we hand them on to other people where they become great players.
Great players.
When you're talking about great number 8s, great All Black number 8s, he's got to come in the conversation. And there's another certain All Black number 8, obviously the great Zinzan Brooke, and that's who you'll inevitably be compared with. But
like players.
Yeah, you've got Mcgraw, you've got Buck Shelford, but boy, he's arguably in that top 3 conversation, isn't he?
I sort of think, the prior to Kieran Reid, or during Kieran Reid's playing day, so to speak, before he racked up the numbers that he did, it was Buck versus Zinni, really. I mean, I know you mentioned Murray Mcgraw as well, but really the debate used to be around Buck or Zinni. And now basically that'd be the 3 now is Buck, Zinni, or Kieran Reid.
Oh, absolutely. And listen, we kind of look at his game and what made him the player that he was. And I listen, I think Zinzan Brooke was the benchmark in terms of a number 8 that could do some pretty amazing things that was multi-skilled. And I think Kieran Reid actually brought his own little tricks into the game. His ability to range wide, master tactician when it came to the line out. There was a time between, I think it was probably in the early 2000s to about 2007, where we couldn't buy a line out. When Kieran Reid came into this All Black side, from what I've heard, he pretty much remodeled it. And there were times, and you saw that with the Crusaders, when their line out was faltering, all of a sudden he'd call himself. So very good in that area, very good ranging wide, great defender. There's one particular hit on Rocky Elsom at the 2011 World Cup semi-final at Eden Park against Australia, where Rocky was busy striding down the middle of the field, but out of the darkness came Boomfa, as Justin Marshall would say. Just an absolutely fantastic hit, and those will stay in the memory. Also, some of those performances in South Africa where he was ranging wide and we were starting to see the offload. Obviously, Sonny Bill Williams had brought the offload into the game, but man, just a really good skill set.
I think when you mention South Africa, to me, he seemed to save his best for South Africa. When you can just picture him quite often with the games in South Africa, particularly in the high valley, the way that he used to be so mobile around the field and just everywhere. And I suppose the memories of him, as say, running around in an All Black jersey in South Africa probably stick in my mind stronger than anything else.
Yeah. Oh, very much so. And I'll tell you another. It proves another point. I can recall a semi-final where they played against the Sharks down in Christchurch for the Crusaders. And that particular night, I think the Sharks really got stuck into the Crusaders' pack. And to be honest, the only one that stood up to them that night was Kieran Reid. He was just absolutely amazing. Another one of his little skills that he had in his kit was his ability to win kickoff receives and basically attack it in the air. I can think back to a game in, I think it was Dunedin, where Australia and the All Blacks were going try for try, and there was only about a couple of minutes left, and we needed to win the kickoff. And he won the kickoff, got involved with a carry, and then ran a brilliant angle and threw an inside pass to, I think it was Beauden Barrett, who scored beside the post. And it just showed you the measure of the man, or his ability in the air. Probably if there was probably a little bit of a downside to Kieran Reid, just I think there was maybe a season or a season and a half where he had a bit of a back injury. And I don't think when he came back from that injury, he was quite the same player, Ashwin, if we were really honest.
I agree with you. But I think the thing that the thing that helped him out was just the immense amount of experience that he had that sort of filled that gap, obviously, with the lack, or I don't know how to put it the right words, but as you said, he wasn't the player that he was before the back injury, but because of his experience, not really noticeable because you knew what he was capable of, but still maintain these extremely high standards.
Oh, very, very much so. And even he was a little bit like Mcgraw and Carter pre-2015, where they were basically written off before that World Cup. But boy, he came out and proved himself. Even if you look at that World Cup, he still played reasonably well in the World Cup. I suppose one area where he suffered, we always know that sometimes great players have great allies. You think back to Zinzan Brook, he had Michael Jones and Alan Wetton. Guys like that. There was, and then he had the likes of Jamie Joseph. He had some good number sixes. When the likes of Jerome kind of moved on from the All Blacks, I don't know if the All Black selectors ever actually found the number six, and I still don't think they've actually found another six. And then you lose the great Richie Mccloy, the great one, and and then you've got Sam Cane, who can be at times a much maligned player by the public out there, but still the number one choice in the selectors. But he still had to remodel his game, to the way the team that was playing.
Yeah, definitely. But it's like, I think what you're saying, since Kieran Reid, the Richie Mccloy, Kieran Reid, and Jerome Kaino sort of back three of the scrum for the All Blacks have moved on. They really haven't settled on a back three combination that's worked for them to the levels that, as you've alluded to, when we had the previous greats with when Zinni was at 8 to when Kieran Reid is there. They haven't actually got it. I mean, even now today, who's going to be the number 8 this year? Artie's out. Even if Artie was available, is he the 8? Is he the 7? Or are we going to play him very mobile 3 with Artie at 6? Really, they're just not confident in their back row at the moment, and it just shows what a hole he left when he sort of left the All Blacks scene.
Oh, listen, very, very much so. I could even see in that semi-final when they were knocked out in 2009, you saw a man that was really, really broken. It would have been the perfect fairy tale way to go out. But you and I both know international sport is never a fairy tale. Even a couple of our greatest players in terms of maybe Dan Carter and Richie Mccloy had to endure a quarterfinal exit against the French in 2007. So yeah, definitely not probably the way that he wanted to go out. I don't know if he's the sort of player that's ever probably received quite the accolades that he should have, and he probably does get unfairly compared to the likes of Zinzan Brook and Buck Shelford and guys like that, especially. But like I say, man, right up there, and only time will tell how good
the
Kieran
Kieran Reid
Reid
was.
really
Yeah,
was.
yeah, absolutely. It's usually something a few years down the road, you start to look back. In terms of just, I brought up Scott's comment there. I think what we're relating to there, Scott, is the fact is that it's the settled back row. You like the players that you mentioned, and Cullen Grace coming through, Hoskins, who had a blinder last week, and then you got Lachlan Bashir and the likes coming through. But at the end of the day, it's about a combination of a back three putting it together. And that's what I don't think that the All Blacks have quite achieved since the moving on Richie and now Kieran as well. So that's the thing. And as you alluded to, Steve, and Stefan's also, people die in fairy tales all the time.
Oh, Stefan, jeepers. Have you had a bad day, Stefan? With it? Jeepers.
and, and you have to be careful these days because what the Prince did to Sleeping Beauty was not good either anymore.
Yeah. Oh,
Hey, but before we go down a fairy tale rabbit hole, how do you want to rank your top three, or you just want to stick with the top three?
oh man, I think you probably have to stick with Zinni, because he brought a dimension nobody had seen before, and we always knew his skill level and what he was capable. And boy, he had all the skills. Not too many weaknesses. I suppose the only real area you could argue where Reid might have been that touch better is just the line out ability, because and I suppose when you think about it, at the time the All Blacks had a very powerful line out, Ian Jones, Alan Wetton, so they had a lot of line out options. So when you've got those sort of options, and don't forget, this was back in the days where you actually had to jump, get your feet off the ground. You had nobody lifting, unless you were playing in South Africa.
No. That was not lifting. That was just holding the player at the top of the jump.
Oh, supporting. Yes.
Supporting. That's right. That was not lifting.
Oh, listen, he's man, like I say, he's right in the conversation. But as Stefan said before, yeah, it's not always a fairy tale sometimes. And when we are picking these sides, some very, very, very good players miss out.
Yeah.
But yeah, listen, he's top two. I wouldn't have an issue with him or Zinni. I think the likes of inside word from Japan, readers borrowing Brownie's camp and heading to England to appear in Peaky Blinders. Wow.
Yeah, this is like, if you haven't seen the image, it's all he needs is to borrow Brownie's cap, and he's a dead ringer for Peaky Blinders there. So look out in the east end of the England.
Oh, absolutely, and he's got the look. He's got the look for it, hasn't he? And
absolutely.
I think I saw a black and white pic of him somewhere, and he kind of looked a bit like a gangster. So he might be ideal. Thanks for that, Rich Freeman. I hope everything's all good up there in the Orient, mate. And, and always enjoy your work up there, Richie. Listen, great. Yeah, superb player, but definitely in that conversation. So I hope he enjoys his retirement. Be interesting to see if we see him in coaching.
Yeah, I think. I think he will. I think he's one of the things that put him up there at the levels that he got to is that he was an intellectual player as well. Whereas you might have said Zinni was an instinctive player, you'd have to say Kieran Reid was an intellectual player, and so you can't help but feel that some of that experience that he's had will be well served being shared amongst players coming through. And you're hopeful, right? As opposed to being stockpiled down in Christchurch, that it could be he could help out Counties Manukau, who wouldn't say no to the expertise and experience that he could bring to an organisation like that to help them to develop their players.
Oh, definitely got some transplanted roots in that particular area, and we know it's interesting that we are talking about Counties Manukau, because I suppose it'd be a good segue into our next subject, being the Bunnings NPC 2021, which kicks off in August as well, Ashwin.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting one. I don't know whether I'm looking forward to this or not. With the news coming out of the Auckland camp, it's a bit scary for an Auckland supporter, but I suppose for one who's wearing his Taniwha top there, you'll be looking forward to seeing Offer running out in the front row in the first or in those weeks in August.
Oh, that's a case. I'll believe it when I see it, sort of thing. I think the Northern Rugby Union will be just happy to pick up the cash. But yeah, it's an interesting start to this year's Bunnings NPC in the men's division. It kicks off on Friday the 6th of August with pretty much it's a championship match between Manawatu and Counties Manukau. So yeah, it's little bit of a strange one there. I thought if you wanted to start a competition with a bang, you'd maybe have. I see the second game on Saturday is Taranaki v Hawke's Bay, and Hawke's Bay are the newly promoted team to the Premiership in 2021. But let's not forget they're also the Ranfurly Shield holders, and they've got Shield challenges against Otago in week 2, Waikato in week 4. In week 6, they take on North Harbour. That'll be an interesting Shield challenge. Now, this is all depending whether they've still got the Shield or not. The week later, week 7, they take on Bay of Plenty in a Ranfurly Shield challenge. So this competition runs through until it's pretty much the final round, which is, and I'll tell you that in a moment. In fact, that final Shield challenge for Hawke's Bay is against Tasman, so that's going to be a real tough one. That's the only thing that Tasman haven't done. Remember, they are the back-to-back champions of the Premiership, and of course that round robin runs through until Sunday the 10th of October, with the semi-finals scheduled for Friday the 16th, Saturday the 17th, and the finals of the the championship on Friday the 23rd of October, and the Premiership final heading through on the 24th. So it's going to be an interesting. I suppose the questions we're asking ourselves are, how Hawke's Bay going to go in the Premiership round? Are Tasman going to be the team to beat again? I'd have to probably say yes. You'd agree with
Absolutely.
me there, wouldn't you?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, Tasman, and I mean, like when we look at players coming into squads and the like, I don't think there's been. I mean, apart from out of Auckland, doesn't seem to be a lot of movement going around the country. So really, when you look at, we haven't heard of shifts. Actually, I haven't heard about a lot about signings this year. As I said, apart from the big marquee players like Hoskins and Offa leaving Auckland, but as you say, well, I don't think Offa will probably pull on the Cambridge Blue, but yet to be seen. But there hasn't been a lot of talk about players signed up anywhere or leaving anywhere. So based on that, you'd have to say Tasman really going to have the similar squad to last year. Yeah, you could probably go close to putting half your house on Tasman to go back to back.
Oh, very, very much so. I think the other side will be watching with a lot of interest, because they put up quite a good performance in the semi-final last year. Was Bay of Plenty Steamers, and once again they've recruited very well. Obviously picking up Manaki Selby Rickett from Southland for the 2021 season. So definitely a team to watch. Going to be interesting times for Auckland. Of course, well publicised. They've lost Hoskins Satutu, a little bit more talk, but there might be a couple of others. They've lost Offa Tuangafasi, but to be brutally honest, I don't get to see a lot of those All Blacks a lot of the time. I'm picking a team that maybe a bit of a dark horse to watch this year will be Waikato. We know that they've had a very, very young team, and they are very much due to fire if they can get the likes of Quinn Tupaia back on the paddock.
I tell you, for me, one that will be one to watch is Wellington. Tell you the truth, they've actually last year in particular they actually had a very strong squad, but they won what they would sort of label as their hard matches, and then they dropped the easy ones. So if they can knock those easy losses out of their repertoire, I think that could be another team that will be looking to be challenging for the top 4 spots.
Yeah. Oh, very much so. You'll find some of these the teams that were there or thereabouts last year. I mean, to say Canterbury would be very disappointed with their season, their 2021 season. In fact, at one stage they were looking like they were going to be relegated. If you
relegated, yeah.
It all came down to that. It came down to that very last game of the season, and a Shea Fihaki a long-range penalty against Auckland. I can see Ashwin shaking his head. The very
Oh, it
time
was
that
just poor
he
game management by the Auckland team, and that, I mean, going back a season already, that's just poor game management that day. To send a message. Yeah, because that's what it's about, right? I mean, when you come to, like, at the moment we're watching Super Rugby. The thing is that the Crusaders, they maintain their dominance because of the fact is it's the mental edge that they hold over most of the teams, and they send a message time and time again. And that's what you got to do, don't you? When you get that
oh
opportunity, you send that message.
oh very very much so. It's about, it could have been such a change. I mean, to say it was a real tough one. If you recall, Bay of Plenty v North Harbour getting relegated on at very last day. And if you think about it, North Harbour didn't play too badly last year. They beat the eventual champions Tasman. They had a couple of other really good wins at all, but they just probably weren't consistent enough to stay up in the premiership.
That's right. That's right. I mean, like, yeah. I mean, I think I keep mentioning Auckland, but that's the thing for us is that it's going to be interesting to see how much steel Stephen Bates can bring to that forward pack, because that's what it's probably going to come down to. Is the steel that the Auckland forward pack can show, because their back line, they're not going to have too many losses there. They're going to get a player like Salesi Rayasi, obviously coming back from the Hurricanes and fitting in onto the wing there. Zahn Sullivan, possibly at fullback, if not first five. And as we've always said, Harry Plummer, although we sort of look at Harry Plummer and saying, hey, look, whether he's a Super Rugby level first five or not is questionable. He is more than adequate at an NPC level. And so I think the back line is not an issue, ironically, considering how the back line goes for the Blues. I think it's really the forward pack, and whether the disruptions and the rumors and everything that's going on around, it all seems to be based around the forward pack. Because if the forward pack, at the end of the day, we know if the forward pack doesn't show up, you're basically toast.
Yeah, exactly. Got to line all your ducks up and Drax. Doesn't it be a bit remiss of us to not mention the Pharah Palmer Cup?
Oh, before we head to that, I mean, just on Simon's comment as well. Interesting the fact that obviously a lot of focus going into Bay of Plenty being effectively based out of Tauranga, as they'll only be playing one game in Rotorua. As someone that's grown up, I mean, since the formation of NPC in the 70s, it's sort of like Rotorua was the home of Bay of Plenty rugby. It really has flipped on its head, hasn't it?
Yeah, not to mention you've actually got an international stadium there, so it's a
Rotorua International Stadium.
Yeah, it's a as we know with the Bay of Plenty area, and they're getting they're getting a lot of media at the moment, but not for all the right reasons. If you know what around in and around ill-disciplined players at club level, but it is quite a big area, and I think it's really important that the Bay of Plenty don't just nurture or think about Tauranga, but they also make sure that area of Rotorua that provides some pretty useful rugby players is well looked after. And don't forget, they've got a great hub down there in Rotorua Boys High.
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at the number of players, we've seen one trotting around for the Chiefs, almost back out of retirement, and Liam Messam, who's originally another one out of Rotorua, the Rotorua Boys High, if I remember it correctly.
Yep.
So, I think Sam Kane, was he out of Tauranga actually, originally? Tauranga. So, but, there's been a lot of top product, for want of a term, that's come out of Rotorua. And so, you got to be careful about putting all your eggs in that Tauranga basket, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. Don't disagree with you at all. Hey, listen, I hope you're enjoying the show. Coming up to almost to 8:30 here on New Zealand Sport Radio, and don't forget to like the channel. Ashwin, you'll take all the punters or the new punters that are watching where they need to go to if they want to subscribe to the channel.
Well, basically, make sure you head over to YouTube, and you can obviously hit the subscribe button on YouTube. We're also on Twitter. with the Twitter handle there with DrivingMaul still running, and obviously on Facebook, where all the comments flow through on the New Zealand Sports Radio Facebook page. So make sure you go and like and share those posts as well, to make sure we get the exposure out there for New Zealand Sport Radio and all the fantastic shows that are broadcast on this channel. So I suppose moving along, we can move to the Pharah Palmer Cup, and geez, as dominant as Tasman is in the men's competition, what's it going to be, a 5-peat or 6-peat or 7-peat for Canterbury this year?
Well, I suppose that's the big question, and of course the Pharah Palmer Cup this year, the 2021 Pharah Palmer or Bunnings Pharah Palmer Cup, beg your pardon, kicks off just a little bit earlier on Saturday, the 17th of July. In week one, there's the 3 games to look out for, and that's Auckland v Bay of Plenty. So that's a good kickoff. That's a midday kickoff at Eden Park, and the current champions Canterbury take on Counties Manukau from Rugby Park down there in Christchurch. And the third game of the weekend is Wellington playing Otago at home. Now that venue to be confirmed. So that's over the weekend of Saturday the 17th, Sunday the 18th, and the competition runs through until Saturday the 28th of August. That's week 7, where the final game will be Auckland v Waikato. Once again, that venue to be confirmed, and we go into the semi-finals of the Premiership and Championship on Friday, September the 3rd through to Sunday, the 5th of September, with those finals in the Premiership and Championship.
Hey, what are you looking at? I'm looking at. Hang on. I've got different dates to what you're saying.
Well, that's what I'm looking at the draw at the moment. You're not looking at the males draw by any chance?
No, I'm looking at the Bunnings Warehouse provincial rugby website. It's got 2021 Pharah Palmer Cup fixtures, and the final is slated down for the 23rd of October.
Wow. Well, what we'll do is, that is correct. I've got here Friday the 10th of September through to the 12th of September. So this is the official Pharah Palmer draw that I'm actually looking at. You can't see that because it's a bit too bright. But what we'll basically do,
double check all those.
Yeah, we'll double check that and get it together. But just looking at it, I think Northern are actually playing. They might be playing in the Premiership this year. But it's good to see all the games look like, unlike last year, it looks like they're well spread around Ashwin.
That'd be. Oh, look, I mean, it's the thing. Hard to know, isn't it? But look, it's always good to get them spread around. I look, I mean, I'll take this opportunity to say that this is like, I think we've talked about in women's rugby how if they want to build a player base, they're going to have to somehow figure a way of evening out the player depth. I don't think that dominance of Canterbury, while you're trying to build a brand of women's rugby, is helping that brand any whatsoever.
Yep, I probably agree with you to a certain extent there. Yeah, it is a wee bit weird. I've got 2 complete different draws altogether compared to the website. So I've just found one that kicks off on Friday the 6th of August with Manawatu County Manukau. Yeah, so that's a completely different one again. So this is, I've got to say, this is totally weird. So in fact, if you look at some of those times, they actually don't really match up. I think that looks more like the men's draw than the women's draw, I've got to say, because I just look at the times. Most of the times are 5 past 7, 2:05, 7:05.
Good point. Yeah. There's definitely. I think the draw's only just come out, so maybe there's a bit of editing and proofing that needs to go on in some of the things that have been posted. So
if you're watching the show, folks, Ashwin's just reading the wrong draw. That's all it is. Sorry to throw you under the bus, brother.
Oh, look, well, might be a good time to move on. Hey, look, just gonna just come back. This is like just because. Do you think that there's any opportunity or possibility of Bay of Plenty actually splitting into a Tauranga and Rotorua teams or unions?
If they keep going down the path of not playing any games in Rotorua, it's very much on the cards.
Well, the fear to me is with the moving of games and focus of rugby away from Rotorua, leaves it ripe for the 13-man code to absolutely swamp Rotorua, doesn't it?
Oh, listen, very, very much so. I that's the issue that they've got. It's something similar happened up in Northern where the and a couple of league academies have sort of swooped in. The Adam Blair Academy up in Northern is basically swooped in, and you see a couple of these younger players running around in the NRL. Fisher Harris, who plays for the Penrith Panthers, Darren Brown, who plays for Parramatta Eels. These are all kids that were playing rugby in Northern and are now playing rugby league in the NRL. But hey, listen, that's a good thing. It's great to see these kids realizing their dream, a pathway as well. So yeah, it's a good thing.
Yep, absolutely. Alrighty, and I suppose moving along then, and we've got some test matches that have been announced. Now we've bounced around the world in terms of Italy and Scotland, and nobody's coming to these parts of the world to play. So we've ended up with test matches now confirmed. Tonga, All Blacks playing Tonga at Mount Smart Stadium. Something to live up to there, isn't it? When they pitched that one out there of taking an All Blacks game against Tonga to Mount Smart Stadium, they're setting themselves up with high expectations of a crowd, aren't they?
Oh, very much so, because you're kind of the immediate train of thought. We think back to that. Pre-warm up game, pre-World Cup, where the All Blacks played Tonga. Was it down in Hamilton?
Yeah,
if I recall. And to be honest, it was probably nothing more than a training run. I think the All Blacks racked up close to 90 points in that game, if I recall. And I don't think it did Tongan rugby any good, and certainly I don't think it was any good for the All Blacks. So yeah, I'd like to, you want to see Tonga have their best players available and on deck, and somehow at least have a pre-warm up game before they play the All Blacks.
Yeah, look, they need to have something before they play the All Blacks, and I think Aaron's comment sort of like sums it up. To my mind, they're trying to recreate something that again happened in that 13-man code when Tonga played the Kiwis, and this is like the Tongan invasion happened at Mount Smart, sold out game, and it was the Tongan crowd singing. It's just like that's what they tried to recreate in Hamilton. Didn't eventuate. They totally misread the market, and I think they've done it again.
Yeah, absolutely. So with you're talking about when the Mana Pacifica game was played down in Hamilton. I think that one they got a reasonable crowd for the Mana Pacifica Māori game, but to be honest, it was so late in the year. Once again, yeah, just a little bit of a misread. While it was a reasonably good contest.
Yep.
At the end of the day, I don't know if it was. I don't think it was really full noise from both teams.
Now, moving on, and they've got 2 tests against Fiji, and outside of what would sort of say, I suppose, our main centres. So it's great to see the wider New Zealand public having an opportunity to go and see the All Blacks live, and hopefully they take that opportunity.
Oh, very much so. Actually, there's a little bit of excitement about that, and once again, it comes down to Fiji having their best players on deck. We know they've got some wonderful talented individuals running around. Some of them that probably haven't put their hand up. I'd love to see the likes of Gus Salakula put his hand up and decide to run with Fiji. He'd be a fantastic acquisition, or else maybe what they should have done was called this a Fijian 15 and maybe not made it
Barbarians.
Maybe not made it an official test match, if you know what I mean. To basically, so these guys can have the opportunity to run around for Fiji and not be sanctioned.
Yeah, that's it. And then you would have had quite a few players that we've got running around in the, let's call it Super Rugby or NPC, that could have put their hand up. So yeah, absolutely would have been a better option. But I suppose then they're trying to look like they're playing Pacific teams.
Yeah,
Hey,
pretty
yeah.
much so. But listen, it'll be great to see the All Blacks running out. The last time we saw them was run out was, oh crikey, not quite a year ago. Was it July or August last year when they played, or might have even been later when they played the Australians at Eden Park before they?
No, it was a bit later. There was in New Zealand, because then we went to Australia after the games in New Zealand. Was it?
Yes,
If I remember
yeah,
rightly.
pretty much.
So
And
yep.
the All Blacks finished off their season. Yeah, maybe in their own minds, there's also a little bit of unfinished business. While they eventually were the winners of the Rugby Championship 2020, they probably want to go out and prove a few points this year. So
Well, look,
it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see the selections for that first All Black team 2021.
I'm going to try and put some hope in your heart here, with some All Blacks running out for the Taniwha, because just going through the dates for the game. So they'll play Tonga at Mount Smart on the 3rd of July, which is basically something like about 6 weeks away. So not that far away. They'll follow that up a week later, playing Fiji on the 10th of July in Forsyth Bar. Down in Dunedin, and finally the following week, the second test against Fiji up in Hamilton at FMG Stadium. Now, that's the 17th of July. The rugby or the Bledisloe, or not before the Tri Nations. So there's two Bledisloe matches before the Tri Nations, one in Wellington and one in Auckland. They don't kick off until the 11th of October. So there's a good 2 months between the All Blacks playing Fiji and then playing Australia on the 11th of October. They're going to need those All Black players are going to need some warm-up games to go on against Australia. So, I reckon there's a strong possibility that Hoskins could run out in a Counties Manukau jersey, and Offa could be running out in Cambridge blue.
Yeah, now I'm agitated because Jack Goodhue's injured as well. It would have been fantastic to have both Offa and Jack running around in the Cambridge blue. But yeah, you're definitely right. It sounds like Offa will need some game time, and we will see him running out against Northern. It'll be great to see. I mean, so these squads, especially the most interesting squad, is going to be that Auckland squad. Like a case of who's actually available. You mentioned before Stephen Bates joining the Auckland coaching team. The word is Craig Mcgraw will take over as the head coach of the Auckland team. That's you've heard it first. Here we're breaking that story here on New Zealand Sport Radio, DrivingMaul. You've heard it first. That's the word doing the rounds, that Craig Mcgraw will be taking over as the Auckland coach. And from what I believe, very well liked guy, has been the defensive coach in the past. So hopefully, it surprises me Auckland haven't made that announcement. It's the sort of announcement you really want to make rather sooner than later.
Yeah, you want the chatter and everything around the announcement to be dead before the season gets close.
Yeah. Very much so. So
that means Alama's gone then.
Alama's gone. That's pretty much what I've been told. So yeah, watch that space, unless we've totally got it wrong. But if it does come out in the press, you know where you heard it first.
Oh, geez, that's got a show on itself, surely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, look, I mean, just.
But like a Silver Lake show, but we'll touch on that. Even though we've only got about 15 or 16 minutes, we'll touch that.
Left, on that. Bit of crack on, I suppose, eh? Bit of crack on. Hey, just to round it off. So just as I said, 11th of October. Actually, no, those dates. I'm wrong again.
Mm-hmm.
This is the New Zealand Rugby Football Union's website. Insane in the membrane. It's got the 2021 series, and then underneath it's got the 2020 series.
Oh. Okay.
Sorry about that, people. Been putting you wrong all night. Why stop now? Right, time to move along then. Good time to move along. Hey, look, moving on to re-signings for the Chiefs for next year, and they've started well, and they've signed up their two guys that you put, or one of them anyway, if I remember rightly, if not both of them, you put into your Super Rugby side, and Aidan Ross and Angus Tarval, both back for the Chiefs next year. Good
Wow.
signings.
Yeah. Good. That's where the game starts. as most former props would tell you, it starts up front. And
Yep.
yeah, these two have been very good. And what I've enjoyed about these two props is, even though they got hammered in the first couple of rounds, especially when they played the Crusaders down in Christchurch, it's just the way that you bounce back, and they've bounced back. And also, if you think about their performance against the Blues, the Blues were expected to dominate at scrum time when that game was played down in Hamilton, but that wasn't to be. And these two guys especially have stood up. We saw it again on the weekend in round one of Trans-Tasman Rugby. Aidan Ross dominating his Argentinian opposite. Name escapes me at the moment, when they played the Western Force on the weekend. So yeah, good signing. No problems there.
Yeah. So and that's and then basically just news coming out of the Chiefs camp today. Atu Moli going to looking likely to run out in the starting team this weekend as well. So it looks like they're starting to get some depth back into that front row, which has been a big issue for the Chiefs in the last few years, really.
Well, we shouldn't forget that Atimolu is an All Black. He's run out with the All Blacks. You've also got Sione Mafilio there as well, and of course the other young prop there, just not quite escapes me. Ollie Norris also has gone extra well, as So if they can keep the core of these guys, we know they're really young through the middle row. Oh, listen,
Yep.
I think that they're not on too bad a wicket, you've got to say.
Yeah, absolutely. No, definitely looking strong. And as we've sort of like talked about, and you just mentioned before, all those front rows have just seems to have evened out. Nobody is like overly dominant in the scrumming positions. You might say that like with when Offa and say Carl Tunuka Afi. Oh, geez, great! I can't get it out today. Big Carl, are out for the Blues. They do seem to might have an edge on, but not. But then we know, and we've talked about, they're not. There's dynamic around the field, so you're almost happy to give up a little bit at scrum time as long as you can hold your own or just get the ball back. If you know you're going to get more out of them around the field.
Yeah, not a lot of scrums as well.
Yeah.
In the modern game, I think we saw one game, which I forget the weekend. It may have actually been that Hurricanes game.
The touch footy game. The touch footy game on Friday night.
We resemble more touch than rugby. I think the first scrum was in the 35th minute or something else, which is actually a credit to the players, that they were obviously not making any handling errors. The fact that they had lesser scrums, so you just need guys that are adequate. Actually, speaking of the Hurricanes, of course they've had a signing of their own. Of course, Owen Franks signing with the Hurricanes for the 2022 season. So yeah, once again, a good backup tight head prop to Terrell Lomax.
So I actually think that that signing's a bit better than a backup. You know what I mean? I think he's still got a lot of rugby left in him. I think we've seen a couple of players that have headed back early. Dom Bird's probably another one, due to what's happening globally, the global situation due to COVID and the like. And so, we've mentioned Owen Franks, and probably a few weeks before that, Dom Bird signing from. That's starting to bar up that tight five for the Hurricanes, which we've always said has been an issue. And when you look at the Hurricanes and how they've gone, they got the wooden spoon. I think, they did get the wooden spoon at the end of the day. Really, probably came down to not because of their general play, just because of their set piece. And the signings of Franks and Bird is basically just going to help them strengthen that set piece.
Oh yeah, you throw in, and once again they're starting to. They've immediately added depth with Bird, and then you think they've got Scrafton, and Scott Scrafton still floating around. That's a good battery of line out forwards, and with a team like the Hurricanes, if you give them a lot of ball, boy, they're going to be a dangerous side. I suppose that's offset with the loss of Nani Laumape, who signed with a Parisian club, Stade. Is it Stade Francais?
Yeah, I think so. I think that might be it.
Stade Francais.
But then I've been getting everything wrong tonight, so hey, it wouldn't want to go with me. Hey, someone's back from dinner. Should we let him on?
Oh my God! Listen,
he's still got his dress shirt on.
Oh,
yeah, I know. I'm all smart. Eh? You've even got the long logo up. I leave you for one night, and the logo's all wrong. And geez,
logos. What are these logos he speaks of? Hey, I just sort of thinking while we were talking about Super Rugby players there, good time to segue into the Aussies and how they want to do a bit of cross-pollination across our Super Rugby formats.
Yeah, just to give you a little bit of background, late last year, this was an article that sort of came via Fox Sports. Late last year, it was revealed James O'Connor was considering making a move across the ditch to New Zealand. He'd actually approached the Chiefs, and that's primarily to come up with real quality opposition. And Stefan Minton, he's on fire tonight. And that was just basically to find quality opposition, but that was blocked by Australian Rugby. But their current CEO, Andy Marinos, has revealed on Monday that he was having philosophical conversations with the New Zealand Rugby Union. What does that mean? About opening the borders so players could play in the same competitions, but still be selected. So listen, he says from a Rugby Australian perspective, if playing in the competition, whether it's here or New Zealand, you start looking ahead to Japan and other markets. Listen, I actually quite like the idea. I mean, I already like the idea of seeing, even though they're veterans, the likes of Jeremy Thrush and Richard Kahui, who they are veterans, but boy, I thought they played really well for the Western Force on the weekend. I actually like it. The problem is, will the New Zealand Rugby Union run with this? Because I remember Steve Chu was asked a similar question when he was the CEO of Rugby New Zealand, and he just didn't want a bar of it.
I don't know if there's any benefit in it for New Zealand Rugby. I think the benefit's all for Australian Rugby. The benefit in it for New Zealand Rugby is that you could be making a stronger product, which you could take to market to get a few more dollars. That might be the benefit for New Zealand Rugby, but the reality is, what is the benefit for New Zealand Rugby? Massive wins for Aussie.
No, the benefit is, okay, if you've got 10 teams, right? And I think we will all probably say that, and maybe it's just because we live over here, but the New Zealand player production line is produces more quality players than the Australian one does, right? Therefore, you'd end up saying that probably 60% of all the players across the 10 teams would be Kiwi. Therefore, you'd have a bigger pool of players to pick from. But the biggest win is, as you say, if you produce the best competition in the world with the best players, then you'll be able to get the best money. And that's what you want to be doing. You don't want to have a lopsided competition. You want the best competition that gets the best money. And then you've got some chance of competing with Europe and with their cash.
I like your train of thought, Paul, because can you imagine a team like the Western Force with a couple of marquee Kiwi players who've got a little bit of X factor, or even the Melbourne Rebels who aren't a bad side, but boy, can you imagine them having a quality midfielder that can set the likes of a Kurabeti away? You know, for me, there'd be more interest. I'd be watching those sides a heck of a lot more, and I think a lot of Kiwi rugby supporters would be watching it. That's the upside.
I think, but you know, how many more players to a market can an Auckland 1A competition provide?
Well, look, that's because Auckland 1A goes out and just gathers players from all over the Pacific.
I don't think Fakatava played in the 1A competition, Paul.
Gives them scholarships.
I don't think Fakatava played in the 1A competition, mate.
No, but Tupu did. Tupu did. Anyway, look. At the end of the day, what New Zealand look. I think one of the things that New Zealand's done is look at. I'm just going to look after myself, and what that's meant is that what they need to remember is you can't play yourself. Well, you can play with yourself, but it's not going to. It just makes you blind. But you've got to play other teams. And we've got to keep their quality up, which is why we want to get the Pacific teams up as well, and having a quality Australian, a quality cross Tasman plus Japan in reality competition could bring in some serious cash, and then could actually become a competitor to the top 14 and the Gallagher Premiership as far as wages are concerned.
Just Stefan's comment, does he mean Sam Knock, or is he referring to Sam Derry? Just wanting some clarification there. So, yeah. So,
but we'd also see players coming over from Australia to New Zealand as well. So, I mean, you look at Pete Samu has done it. Alatoa has been over, and there's a bunch of players who have been over. Look, I mean, if we go back far enough, I mean, Martin Johnson used to play in New Zealand, didn't he? So, look, I think cross-pollination, I think the big thing is that they need to make sure they have across both of them is a standard contract, and that standard contract says it doesn't matter if you're playing in Australia or in New Zealand, you get released for all Blacks camps, and if the All Blacks head coaches say you have to be rested, you have to be rested. Make it vice versa. All Aussies that are playing have to be released for Wallabies camps, and just so that you get the exact same access, the exact same control over the players, whether they're playing for Super Rugby Australia or Super Rugby in New Zealand. It doesn't make any difference, and think about it that way.
Interesting what John's saying, isn't it? It's like, let's worry about grassroots, but it's just like, well, it's a trick. It is a chicken and egg, you know. I mean, I'm at grassroots, so it is a chicken and egg, because at the end of the day, if you don't foster a good professional environment and create a good competition that's going to bring in good broadcast dollars, you're not going to have money to be able to A, pay those players coming through from grassroots, but B, take some of that money and possibly give it to grassroots. It's just never going to be there to be able to do that. So it is a bit chicken and egg, but you've got to look after grassroots if you want those players of quality to come through to professional ranks, and you don't want them going off to play other sport.
You say that, but then again, from a if you look at New Zealand rugby, they care about youth rugby, but as far as club grassroots goes, no professional players come through that. So who cares? And I think we see that with the attitude that they have towards the sport.
I think that's where we talked about a while ago in terms of, you know, some of the governance structures at New Zealand Rugby Football Union aren't quite right. We talked about in terms of the women's game development, really the same guy that's looking after that is looking after this and this and this and this and this. And, you know, I think there needs to be a bit more, and, you know, a governance structure set up where it's a bit more granular in terms of what the specific areas are that need to be looked after, and who's heading those up.
And we've been knocking the governance structure at New Zealand Rugby for a while now. Now, there's a good reason for that. It's because we're in New Zealand, and that's what we care about the most, right? But we could equally do the same thing to the Wallabies setup. We could the Australia.
Oh, absolutely.
We could do the same to RFU, Welsh Rugby Union, the French Fédéral, etc. Look, I don't believe any of the unions globally have got it right. The Irish union is probably the closest, but again, still, I think they don't either.
But as you said, I think the reason is because we are local. We are New Zealand Sport Radio, and that's what we see as the fact is that there is a mass. You know, it's just simply that governance structure is just so obviously wrong. And it's like, and you can see that in the impact. Basically, you could say from NPC level down, in the way that rugby's developing. Also, the fact is that how well is Super Rugby really going? I mean, you've said it yourself in terms of the numbers last year were great because we probably came out of our biggest COVID lockdown, and we got some great numbers turning up to watch the game, and interest in the game is high. This year, we've pretty much gone back to status quo. And even last year, when those numbers were great, predominantly those numbers were up in Auckland, not anywhere else.
Yep, no, I agree. It's one of those things that there's very short-termism view, and because a lot of these people are coming from a corporate background where you're judged on quarterly results, maybe annual if you're lucky. Now, the thing about the sports association is, look, you don't have shareholders who are going to vote you out of your position if you don't do well this quarter. It is look, the RFU has been around for over 100 years. New Zealand Rugby's been around for getting on that kind of length of time as well. I don't know exactly how long, but a lot of the clubs are 100 years old now. You need to start thinking, where are we in a decade? Not where are we next year?
Absolutely.
What's the attendance next game? Really doesn't matter. What's the attendance in 10 years' time? What's the trend over that time? That's what matters, and that's something you start thinking, but they don't.
No, they don't. Not at all. Yeah, basically, I don't. To be honest with you, I don't worry about it if it's a corporate guy or not. I actually think, when we look at the discussion around the Silver Lake versus Forsyth Bar, we've talked about it ourselves again. That we see the value that a Silver Lake can bring because of the expertise it brings, and that's all corporate-based expertise. So I don't have an issue with corporate base. It's about the right governance structure, and it's about having the right people. At the moment, you don't get the right people, and you haven't got the right governance structure.
Yeah, but that's what I guess. Again, it's not anti-corporate. I'm just saying, because the people have come from corporate and are used to looking in that type of time frames, that's what they're trying to do here. What they haven't done is they haven't adapted their approach to a different.
I won't agree. Oh no, not at all. A bad corporate is looking at your results for this year. A good corporate is doing exactly what you said, and this is like, what is our company looking like in 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years? Well, that's the successful companies. Corporate companies will be doing exactly that.
Most CEOs don't last more than 3 years, so they don't really give a shit. So whilst they'll also have a plan, they never expect to have to implement it.
But that's where we talk about, right? I mean, when we look about a good company in terms of, and that's what sport is. Let's not get it wrong. When all these sort of people that don't really even follow, they say, I'm an All Blacks fan, and they're jumping on it's our team and all this sort of rubbish that they're going on about. They really, they just, I don't even know how to explain them, because they really aren't fans at all. So the fact is, what I sort of see is that, again, I come back to a good company looks at short, medium, and long-term goals. Successful companies look at short, medium, long-term goals, and that's what sport has to look at as well. You can't forget about today, but you've got to have an eye to the future, and it's what you've got to look at. Sport is a business, absolutely 100%, and you've got to look at your short-term goals, your medium-term goals, and your long-term goals, and you've got to look at your corporate governance. You look at your mission statements, your vision values, and that all ties in to your long-term objectives. And your short-term objectives have to tie into that as well. It's real basic stuff. It's really not rocket surgery.
Yep, rocket surgery, brilliant. So you're hosting. I've no idea what you guys have talked about this evening, so I don't know where we're going next.
That was basically it. Because look, it's even 9 o'clock.
we are pretty much done, Paul. But we probably botched up the Pharah Palmer Cup, and you asked a couple of relevant questions that you actually put into the notes, and I was just tracking back over those notes, and you asked some interesting questions there in and around the makeup of the Pharah Palmer Cup Premiership and Championship. So you want to just give us your views on that, Paul?
So the Pharah Palmer Cup last year, or historically, has been a Premiership Championship setup, just like the Mitre 10 Cup / Bunnings NPC. Then last year they reverted to a north-south structure to reduce cost on travel, and this year have gone back to a Premiership Championship structure. Despite, anyway, I'm going down that rabbit hole. But what they've done is they've taken the results from 2019 to decide what your position is in 2021, and have totally ignored all the results from 2020 last year. A couple of sides really changed their ability last year, in the fact that, well, particularly Northland went from being a sort of competitive championship team to being very nearly in the playoffs, only missing out on sort of countback in the end, equal with the same number of points as historical powerhouses Auckland and Counties Manukau. But because they didn't get themselves promoted 2 years ago, they get put back in the championship. Otago got themselves promoted, but last year had an absolute shocker, winning, maybe 1 or 2 out of 5 games. I mean, really, really poor. But they're still going to get promoted anyway, even though the Manawa 2, who got demoted, were way stronger than they were. Otago this year, in all honesty, are going to get well, if they win a game this season, I'll be impressed, because looking at their
eat your hat.
I will not eat my hat. Something might have been eating my other hat though. Look, I've got a hole.
Oh, jeez.
So that's by ignoring last year's result, ignoring the growth of certain provinces. I think that they've got a couple of teams in the wrong ones. Now, Manawa 2 and Northland are going to be the strongest teams in the championship, and I think everyone else, good luck to you. One of those two will get promoted, and Otago will go down because okay, we're not going to have the sevens ladies who were involved last year, so that's going to alter the strength of some of these provinces. But I really do, I do question how they've gone about structuring this. And the answer is, we've just done what the results from 2 years ago, and there's no explanation as to why.
Yeah. Well, Paul, it is rather strange. I'm sort of looking at even Northland's draw. Of course, you look through a lot of those teams that they played last year really did struggle. The likes of North Harbour, Tasman, Taranaki to a lesser extent. I can see Northland probably sweeping those sides aside and meeting a team that finished in the Premiership semi-finals last year in Manawa 2. So it is rather bizarre. And also, I was looking at the right draw before that. Pharah Palmer Cup kicks off on Saturday, the 17th of July, with the last game heading through in round robin until Saturday, the 28th of August, and the semi-finals of the following weekend on Sunday, the 5th of September in Pharah Palmer Cup. But I'm sure we'll be getting out on the road, Paul, and watching a few of those games.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the NPC, I have written, I've got a spreadsheet with all the games in already. And Stephen, it looks like I am going to struggle to make it up to Northland. So I think you will be officially our Northland correspondent. There's only one of the 5 games up there that I can actually make because of clashes with other games as well. So we'll be looking at using our resources as judiciously as we can to cover as many games as we can. Just shared on the screen there for those of you who aren't listening to the podcast but who are watching the video, the north-south tables from last year. Those with green are the ones in the Premiership this year. Those in red are the ones that are in the Championship. And as you can see, Manawa 2, who came second, are in the Championship from the South Division, and Northland, who came third in the North Division, are in the Championship. There, both teams have 2 teams below them in those tables who are in the Premiership. So some interesting ones there. Some interesting decisions there, as we say. Also, I'm amazed Stephen, it's starting so early. And July, wow, that's
I was going to say that.
The reason
Now they've got the right draw up.
I don't understand. The NPC doesn't start then, I guess, because it would clash with mid-year tests, maybe. But then again, the NPC clashes with the I've gone blank with the Rugby Championship test. So I don't understand kind of why. I'm a bit surprised the Pharah Palmer Cup starting so early, about a month before the NPC, by the looks of things.
We were going to do a little bit on Silver Lake, Paul, but we might need another whole show to discuss that, so we might have to.
I was just saying. I mean, you would have seen the tweets, Paul. Probably something we want to sort of like do the pros and cons sometime. Maybe we sort of like talk about the 2 options, and we can look at what are the benefits and what for each and negatives for each, and see where it sort of leaves us.
Yeah, sure. Look, I had a tweet by someone. Actually,
Craig from Western, from Perth.
Yes, from Perth, saying, "Hey, Paul, you're the only independent sort of rugby pundit over there. Can you please give us an independent view?" Look, folks, we've talked about Silver Lake over the on this show 4 or 5 times this year already. I've also put out a supporters only one on looking at how New Zealand Rugby is going to spend their 380 odd million if and when they get it. And compare that to how the Welsh Rugby Union have spent their CVC money and the RFU as well. So if you want to have a look at that, listen to that show or watch that video, become a supporter of the channel over at patreon.com/NZ Sport Radio. Yeah, no, obviously the Forsyth Bar one is an interesting one that's gone into it. Perhaps compare and contrast. I'm not sure whether we'll do it as a DrivingMaul show or whether we'll do it as a Patreon special, supporter special video. But yes, there's definitely some things to look in there. And a couple of points that I've put on in our chat are, first off, the money is pretty much immaterial in the decision making, because the money can come from multiple sources at around about that kind of level. Whether you do it through bonds or whether you do it through a share offering or whether you do it through Forsyth Bar, whatever you do, there are a number of places money can come from. At the end of the day, the big selling point that New Zealand Rugby keeps coming back to is that capacity, is the capability that Silver Lake adds, which I think you mentioned earlier, Ashwin. And at the end of the day, that's why they're choosing Silver Lake. It's not the money number, it's not the dollar number. That dollar, they can get the dollars from a number of different places. They can't get the capability, the expertise, the streaming platform that Silver Lake brings, which is why they're really behind it. It is interesting. I mean, look, we've had various people today. I mean, Buck Shelford has chimed in. Steve Hansen has. We've lots of people are chipping in now, and I think the general view is, why are we washing our laundry in public? This is stuff that should be discussed behind the scenes. But I think what has happened is that it was being dealt with behind the scenes, but they got to an impasse, and therefore one of the sides made it public. Because remember, that letter from the the New Zealand Rugby Players Association was dated end of January, that came out sometime in sort of March, April, wasn't it? So they had about 2 months of doing it in private before they basically ended up just shouting at each other and getting no response.
Paul,
do you want to? Sorry, Steve. You go, Steve.
Yeah, I was going to say something we shouldn't forget in this particular debate, that the New Zealand Rugby Union has got the support of all 27 unions as well. And I've just posted something on our rugby group chat, letter penned by the chairman of the Northern Rugby Union, Andrew Richie, and that's in support of the Silver Lake deal. So I'll get you to have a quick look at that in your own time, Paul. But
no, I've seen it, and look, I get what he does, but he unfortunately mixes up a few things here around support of the grassroots and money, and he confuses I think he confuses the discussion a bit with that letter. So it's not the best. I don't think it's the best approach letter, but I do understand that the provinces have seen a lot of what we haven't seen, which is a lot of the detail around this. What I hope to do, I'm going to try and send an email out to a few of the CEOs of the provinces and ask them, how would you spend the money you're going to get, wherever it's from, to support grassroots, and see what they come back with. Hopefully they'll understand that that's what we'll talk about. We won't talk about this sort of competing of where the money comes from, but just about how would they spend that cash? How do they see grassroots can be grown with that money the best? And hopefully we'll get some answers as to how they're going to use that cash, because at the end of the day, that's the important thing, is how the cash is used.
Paul, you're probably best to sort of explain, or the question that Simon's got in terms of, so what does Silver Lake bring to the table in terms of the skills? As he said, Man City's obviously been an investment that they made a few years ago. But two things there, I suppose. What other sporting investments have they made, and if any, and what will they be able to bring to the table for the All Blacks that will be beneficial for them?
So I think there's a couple of things that they bring. I'm not sure as to who else they of the list of their sporting investments. But my understanding is they do have an online streaming platform of some form. They can put some sort of membership or paywall kind of production of content through. Now, since New Zealand Rugby has a share in Sky, who own Rugby Pass, you'd think that actually that's already there. They have a some sort of ownership in that, in one of those sort of formats already. But Silver Lake will actually own and have something around that sort of piece. Secondly, let's be honest, they have and yeah, Simon, yes, yeah, UFC I think is one of Silver Lake's investments. Look, it's just the business contacts they have. At the end of the day, if New Zealand Rugby needs a new sponsor, well, hey, Silver Lake knows and has the phone numbers of all the top CEOs of the top businesses around the world. That if they're looking for it, they can get access to people that New Zealand Rugby would have to make an effort to get access to. So their network is clearly something that is very strong. And I think one of the people have said that, yeah, Silver Lake is good at hiring people. Again, people want to work for Silver Lake because you get paid well, and they can afford to go out and get the right people they need.
The right people.
And they're good at getting the right people, apparently. I don't have any evidence of that, but I know that was one of the sort of things that was put out there. But I think essentially their network is going to be probably the strongest piece that they bring to this, in all honesty.
Yeah, it is multiple sports teams that it does own. I've just been trying to Google it, and it keeps going up with Man City, who have done well, not too badly over the last few years. But and then it goes and other sports teams in the USA, Australia, and China, without actually saying what those teams are. So, yep, they own a few teams around the world, but we just know that Man City is obviously the biggest investment they obviously have, because that's the one that's named.
I mean, there is a difference though in here that you're not investing. They are kind of investing in a team, which is the All Blacks, but they're also investing in an entire sport in a country, in that kind of way. So I think they'll need to change their mindset slightly, but I do think that initially they will be looking at using their skills or leveraging the All Blacks themselves first, potentially looking at leveraging the Black Ferns in the future as women's rugby grows. But as far as I can tell, I've not seen anything from them that says they're going to look at leveraging Super Rugby teams or leveraging the sevens or leveraging the under-20s or anything else. So I do hope that they try that someone eventually realizes running a sport, an entire sport, off of the income of one team is difficult. You need to grow other income streams. You need to diversify your income streams. You can't just have it all coming from the All Blacks.
Yeah. The interesting thing, the biggest fallacy for me in the Forsyth Bar proposal, and obviously we don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole in that, and we can chew up another 3 hours talking about the whole thing, but there's this fallacy that there's all these All Black fans that are going to buy shares in it, and all these All Black fans are making noise. Oh, I'd buy, if I had the opportunity, I'd buy some shares in the All Blacks. Yeah, right. Because if you're either throwing money down the toilet, or you're looking at the prospectus that has to be issued before the IPO happens on it, and you're going to go, oh, this company doesn't actually make any money. Why am I buying shares in it? Because I'm a fan. Yeah, right.
Okay, now look, at the end of the day, where is the investment going to come into these shares? Is the prospectus has to show an ongoing income. Absolutely. Now, so that depends on how they divvy up the revenue and the costs of the whole thing to make that section of it profitable. And at the end of the day, who's going to be investing in it? It's going to be KiwiSafe at the end of the day, which means it's got to be a good prospectus. Otherwise, KiwiSafe won't invest in it. If KiwiSafe doesn't get involved, then there isn't enough money in New Zealand, I don't think.
So, whoa, back the truck up here. You're saying that KiwiSaver is going to be the New Zealand superannuation fund is going to buy?
No. That's different. Superannuation fund is different to KiwiSafe. So KiwiSafe, you basically invest, and a bank has a unit trust invested in stocks.
Dude, no, you got it wrong, man. This is like KiwiSave is like, yeah, you got it right in the fact that, okay, there's unit trusts in that, but they're basically buying blocks of a company on your behalf under a portfolio of a certain title. At the end of the day, they're still going to do their homework on whether it does an ROI. If it doesn't do an ROI, they're not going to buy it.
Well, that's what I said. It's the prospectus has to work, because the place where the place where the money is for investing in stocks is KiwiSafe. So if you can't produce an ROI and a good prospectus, if you can't put a proper business case around why people should buy it, it's not going to be man on the street going to their bank and going to their stockbroker and buying the shares.
That's the sales pitch. That's the sales pitch from Forsyth Bar and the RPA. Is the fact is that, well, these are the the New Zealand fans who own the team will be able to have ownership in it by buying shares.
Absolutely, but people aren't going to do that.
Yeah, and it's just like the other thing is that if you look at the good KiwiSaver funds that are out there, they're not buying predominantly in the New Zealand market. They're buying predominantly in the overseas market.
Exactly, predominantly, but still, one of the biggest investors in the New Zealand market is going to be KiwiSafe. If you don't get a proportion of that KiwiSafe, you're not, and plus other funds, other places from other funds from other places, then you're not going to raise that kind of capital. Would be my expectation. And I'm not an expert in the New Zealand market. I'll agree, but I was going to say, because the things that, like, I mean, it's not the first, there's IPOs going on all the time, and the IPOs that go on don't rely on KiwiSaver. They simply don't, because when you go back to, I mean, like, I haven't bought shares for a long time, but when I bought shares years ago, when I was single and had disposable income and no children, it was just like there was no KiwiSaver. All the shares were bought by either as individuals, and then they have a certain percentage that were always to institutional investors, but it wasn't KiwiSaver back then. So the KiwiSaver aspect is there. That's just one aspect. It's not necessarily the main investor into any IPO that comes out. Yeah, okay. KiwiSaver is just like is a wrapper for institutional investors, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it's still the institutional investors is where you've got to get that money from, right? At the end of the day, that's where it's got to come from. And that's where you're going to sell these shares. So you're not going to sell them on the street. It's not going to be individual shareholders. It's going to be institutional investors through various unit trusts, which is what, whether you have it under a Kiwi wrapper or a non-Kiwi wrapper doesn't really matter too much. But KiwiSafe has increased the amount of money in that space significantly, because more people are saving that way rather than just purely through houses anymore. But anyway, it's whether it's through KiwiSafe or not. KiwiSafe is what most people are kind of are aware of. It's those institutional investors that are going to have to be persuaded to buy this. It has to be a good prospectus, otherwise they won't buy, and it's not going to happen.
It's not a good prospectus. We know that.
I understand here that Aaron said, look, New Zealand Rugby has not made a profit in many years. That's fine, but the point is that Silver Lake is investing in a company that is co-owned between New Zealand Rugby and Silver Lake, and the same would happen with the Forsyth Bar piece, right? And the question is, what is within that company, and is that company profitable? Because New Zealand Rugby then uses the profits from that to fund all its loss-making grassroots provinces. Okay, that's not part of
that with their dividend.
Yeah, their dividend is used to basically pay the provinces. So the question there is, what do you put in there? And does that piece make a profit? That piece has to make a profit because you're going to put all your income things in there. The question is, what costs do you put in there? And if you put next to no costs in there, then hey, it's nicely profitable for your institutional investors for their very small percentage. So now the prospectus can look very good because they have got some very stable income streams that bring in cash. The question is, what costs are you packaging up with those income streams? And we're not so much a rugby podcast here. We're now trying to be a financial podcast. But I said the prospectus can be good, and it can show a steady income. It'll be a utility style investment rather than a growth style investment. So you're looking. So people who would invest in your electricity companies, your water companies, that kind of stuff, will be the people who will be interested in this.
It's quite
Oh, yeah.
interesting. The more you make the profitable arm of the organization attractive, the more losses the other side will incur.
But as I say, the whole
And it's
point.
quite funny because it's like the people that are screaming wildly about the fact that Silver Lake are going to start, own New Zealand rugby with 12% somehow, will then start screaming even more loudly when if the commercial arm, that's the shareholder arm, doesn't perform as well as it's supposed to, then there'll be even less funds in a dire situation for the non-profitable side of New Zealand rugby.
Which is the whole worry of the New Zealand Rugby Players Association.
But the thing is that, so you got no differentiator between the Forsyth Bar deal and the Silver Lake deal, except what we said. And the fact is that whether it's real or not, the perception for New Zealand rugby is that Silver Lake's going to bring in expertise to help them grow the game. If they take it to the stock market,
Sorry, no, grow the income, not grow the game. Difference.
Oh, well, yeah, but you grow the income. Okay. But at the end of the day, you grow the income, you grow the game. So, but it's like, where is the Forsyth Bar version going to bring the expertise in to grow the income? It's not. It's going to be the same people that are going to be there.
Yep. And then this is the point, folks. Is that, look, Silver Lake is looking to grow the income. They're not going to their remit and everything they'll be given responsibility over will not include player numbers, for example. So they're not there for growing player numbers. They're there for growing the income streams, which are involved with the All Blacks, the international teams, basically, potentially Super Rugby teams as well. But everything below that, they have no say in, and no control over, because that'll be outside their that'll be outside of the piece that they have joint ownership of. But there we go. Funny games.
That's about it.
Are you still awake, Stephen?
On our business. What's? No, he's on mute.
And he's on mute as well. So
he's on mute. There you go.
So don't forget, folks, that we'll be back on Thursday with the Super Rugby preview show for Super Rugby Trans-Tasman Round 2. We'll be back tomorrow night with the NRL, the Standoff show covering the NRL and the A-League, the Knicks newsletter. And I'll be here at 7 a.m. every single morning. Sorry, folks, I took this morning off because it was my birthday and had a lie-in. But the morning sports...
That make 2 shows?
At 7 a.m.
That makes 2 shows in 400? Not a bad run, that one.
Oh, I think I might be up to about 5, but even so, it's still not
a bad run.
Yeah, 1 in 100 gets missed. I think it's pretty good. 99 days on the trot before my next day off. So thank you, boys, for holding the fort while I was out for dinner with the girls, and thank you, everyone, for the happy birthday. And catch you. Should we wrap it up then?
Where you go, mate?
Oh, I miss you already.